Hey everyone, before we get started, just a bit of the boring stuff. The information contained on this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal situation. You should consider whether the information is appropriate to your needs and, where appropriate, seek professional advice from a financial advisor. Now on with the episode.
I guess from an emotional perspective, we're on the journey with you. So we're there to provide advice and support and empowerment through the conveyancing process. But also, Joe, we can actually keep everything at an arm's length. So whilst our clients are on that emotional journey of buying and selling homes, whatever it may be, we're actually working away in the background as professionals to ensure that all the documentation's completed, that the banks are doing what they need to do, that special conditions are satisfied, and that everything is in order to effect the settlement on the date it's due under the contract.
Hi, I'm Joe. I bought a house, and despite my experience in real estate, I still had a shitty experience. Apparently I'm not alone, so I've gathered the funniest and realest experts to teach Australia a better way to find their home. Welcome to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. Welcome back, everyone. You're tuning into the No BS Real Estate Podcast. Today on the show, we're going to talk about conveyancing, contracts and lawyers and what that all means when you're buying a home and how important it is to have a good one and what you do when you don't have the right one. I'd like to welcome you to one of our highly recommended conveyancers from the community, Chris Walsh, Director of Walsh Conveyancing. Welcome, Chris, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Hi, Joe, and thanks so much for having me today.
So I came across your name and business from a friend of mine who said you helped so much when she first entered the market with her many questions and concerns. And she was a first-time buyer or first-time home buyer. And I think that kind of experience that you gave her is so valuable. So I'm excited to have someone of your caliber on the show and hear about your experience, advice, and what can help our listeners understand the process a bit better.
Thanks, Joe. And I think for first home buyers, I take on the mother hen role. I have children, so I look at their first home buyers as being young, vulnerable, inexperienced, and they need their hand held throughout the conveyancing process. So it's really important to me that I'm available and supportive to my clients throughout that process.
That's a really good approach to have, because that's what it feels like sometimes when you're, talking to all these really important figures that you need. It's like you need that guidance or that bit of hand-holding. And I think for the first time, to have that approach, that's excellent. And it's nice to hear, that feedback as well from, a good friend of mine who told me she asked a fair few questions and, there was never any, making her feel bad.
Well, it's never about making them feel bad. It's about making them feel supported and empowered to make decisions on their own, but also have the knowledge and the support. It's really important as part of the process.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being one of those people. And that's, I think very important. So you've nailed it. And I just wanted to ask, with this pandemic, we've had 2019 and 2020 and 2021 have been a bit crazy. So I just wanted to ask, how has business been for you through the COVID-19 pandemic?
Sure. So I've been in business now for 20 years. The pandemic over the last couple of years has forced people to stay at home and reevaluate whether they extend their home, whether the house is too small, too big or otherwise. So we've actually been quite busy down here on the Mornington Peninsula, and a lot of people relocating from inner city to, have a different type of lifestyle, whether it's a tree change or a sea change. And so we've found that a lot of people have spent time during the pandemic updating their homes or preparing them for sale. And we've spent a lot of time working with people to ensure that they've got their documentation ready to go, facilitating inspections as well as producing all the documentation in electronic format so they can get signed. A lot of inspections were done virtually, so it was a different way of doing business.
And it would have been a massive adjustment in terms of how you do business. And I know the home industry is absolutely booming at the moment. So I can picture a few people I've spoken to in similar industries that they're all flat out. Has that been difficult to adjust to, having everything remote, especially with your office, like your whole team?
Look, we're a tight-knit team and we're super supportive of each other. So we were able to work in the office and at home based on needs really and how busy we were at that particular time. My team are fairly flexible and we were doing what needed to be done to ensure our clients had happen what needed to have happen.
Good on you. It's always a big adjustment. So I'm glad you guys, got through and are still getting through it. And, you're actually still keeping up with business needs and not, having to shut doors like some other people have had to, unfortunately.
Absolutely. So yeah, look, it's been a trying time and it's been one of those sorts of things that 20 years in business, we've gone from a very much a paper-based job to now everything being electronic. So it's quite a bit of a change, but we're getting there, absolutely.
Unreal. So I've actually heard of some strange experiences in the industry where contracts are finalised or they're not adhered to, and I just wanted to ask, what's one of the funniest or strangest things you've come across in conveyancing?
Probably one of the funniest or strangest is contracts that we've looked at with special conditions due after the date of settlement. So, for example, we've got a contract in with a building and pest inspection that needs to be done, and that's to be completed after we actually complete the day of settlement. So how can the benefit of the building and pest come into play if it's not being done until after the money's handed over and the client hasn't had an opportunity to do that yet? That's a bit of a strange one, but banks keep us on our toes. They're a strange experience on a day-to-day basis in our industry, and I think you'll find that most conveyancers or solicitors that you talk to have ongoing battles, but we do our best to work together to get the ultimate result for the client.
I was just going to say with that building and pest, it's funny. Yeah, they don't get the benefit at all. So I wonder why it's happening afterwards.
Well, I think, unfortunately, sometimes these dates aren't picked up until after the fact. Any diligent conveyancer will look through a contract and see that clearly there is an error there and make changes so that the client can actually conduct that building and pest inspection so they get the full advantage of those special conditions that are there for their benefit. So I always review my clients' contracts as soon as they come in to ensure we don't miss a thing and they get the full benefit of the special conditions to protect their interests.
That's a good tip as well. For people listening out there, building and pests beforehand would be a better idea. So
absolutely.
We'll go through the conveyancing stuff now with established homes. That's the route we're talking about today. So if there's someone who's recently purchased a home that's established, they've signed their contracts and they're sending them over, they need to engage a conveyancer. And some of the guests on our show have shared their stories when they've engaged a conveyancer, and it's often when you have maybe a Section 32 or maybe when you first sign a contract. When is the best time to engage with a conveyancer in the home buyer's journey?
Sure, Joe. I recommend that clients engage a conveyancer once they've found a property that they wish to offer on. So clients have gone, done an inspection, they absolutely have fallen in love with the home and can see that as being either there forever after or potentially an investment property for them. At that time, I would suggest that they request a Section 32 vendor statement and potentially a proposed contract, engage the conveyancer and send all those documents over to the conveyancer to review. At that point in time, we go through the proposed contract. We suggest any special conditions that would be suitable to protect the client. And we also review the Section 32. So we have a look online, have a look at the property, see if there's anything of concern to us, face value, bearing in mind that conveyancers and solicitors don't go out and actually see the property. We rely on what the documentation says as well as our own visual inspections of realestate.com or Domain or wherever the property is listed. So we go through those documents, we take out special conditions that we think might be too onerous or are just ridiculous, and we just do what needs to be done to suggest that the client gets the best opportunity of being protected, time to do due diligence, time to get their finance approved, time to pay the deposit and renegotiate some of the terms prior to signing if that's what's needed. So it's really an important part of the conveyancing process to empower and give our purchasers knowledge prior to entering into the contractual process.
Yeah, there's often that time where you don't really know if you take your Section 32. And I think from your experience, do you find a lot of the time you're first meeting clients when they've already signed a contract, or is it usually in preparation before they sign?
Sometimes first home buyers get caught up in the moment and I can get a frantic phone call saying, but it's excited all at the same time saying, Chris, we've just bought something. We love this property. We've got to buy it. And so I said, okay, send it through. Let's have a look. And if there's no conditions, then we work with it. But ideally, prior to signing a contract in Section 32, we like to review that so that we can sort of circumvent any potential problems that may arise in the future by just reviewing the documentation and make sure that everything's as it should be.
Good tip for anyone listening. And often first home buyers don't really know where to find a conveyancer. It's often a referral from the agent or even a family member or friend. So they're kind of going in with blind faith sometimes. What are the key things that buyers should look out for when they're trying to find the right conveyancer, in your opinion?
I guess word of mouth and personal referral is the best starting point, rather, if you're not quite sure where to start. Google word of mouth. And Australian Institute of Conveyancers also has on its website a great source of information to find an experienced conveyancer in your area. Experience is essential, and the conveyancer needs to be licensed and have adequate professional indemnity insurance. I think that's a really important aspect. You need an experienced conveyancer to be able to ensure that your transaction goes through without too much stress, too much bother. Yep. What we do in the background, the client doesn't need to know about or stress about. We manage all of that for them. So I think experience is a huge thing because we've got the experience to be able to deal with issues as they arise along the way. And I think also, Joe, appointing a conveyancer, you need to feel a connection. You need to feel like I'm in your corner, that I'm going to do everything to the best of my ability to make sure that you get the outcome that you desire. So a connection is important as well.
I think that's one of the biggest things. If you don't click with someone, and often, it's like a gut feel that you probably shouldn't do it sometimes. And I think that's one of the biggest things I definitely go by when I make decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that connection and being able to just talk and communicate and touch base with your conveyancer when you need to have questions answered, whether it be by email or a text message or a phone call, whether it be after hours or on a weekend. We encourage our clients to just stay in touch and don't think that any question's a silly question. Feel supported and empowered.
That's excellent that you guys provide that kind of service because it is one of the biggest investments we make, and often there's a few people we need to talk to along the way to get that support. And to have a supportive conveyancer, as you've put in the way you obviously provide your services, that's excellent. Well done to, on building such a good environment. I guess, what would you say your main role and what kind of services are typically included when you get a conveyancer?
I guess from an emotional perspective, we're on the journey with you. So we're there to provide advice and support and empowerment through the conveyancing process. But also, Joe, we can actually keep everything at an arm's length. So whilst our clients are on that emotional journey of buying and selling homes, whatever it may be, we're actually working away in the background as professionals to ensure that all the documentation's completed, that the banks are doing what they need to do, that special conditions are satisfied, and that everything is in order to effect the settlement on the date it's due under the contract. So there's a lot of stuff that goes in the background to ensure that things happen as they should. So it's not just a paperwork journey, it's an emotional journey that needs to be supported as well. So I pride myself in providing my clients with that emotional support, and people are buying and selling for a whole range of different reasons. So if we can be there to support them through their personal journey as well as doing all our professional stuff in the background, that's one thing I think is really important.
That's fantastic, and it makes complete sense. Like you said earlier, the mother hen role, where you're there to help out and bounce questions off and offer that, supportive network. And I wanted to start with this because I had a friend recently reach out to me, and she said that they actually had a conveyancer that told them that the contract was too long to read when they received their documents, and they asked them to read it themselves and write back to their email with any questions they had. I was shocked. I referred her to, another conveyancer as well. And then in the end, she actually had the same experience where emails weren't being read. And I know that this is not typical service. This is a very busy period of time for businesses. But it leads me to ask, in your opinion, what are the red flags to look out for if they're, not really getting the level of service that's expected, or, something seems a bit off? Like, how can they exit if they've already engaged their services?
Yeah, look, the red flag there is questioning the credibility and experience of the conveyancer that's telling a client to go away and read their contract and come back with any queries that they might have. This is what we do. This is what we get paid to do, is to review and protect. And if someone's being told to go away and try and work out the documentation and come back with questions, to me, that's just not the way to do business. So I guess depending at what stage of engagement you are with that conveyancer, I would be immediately providing notice in writing to that conveyancer to terminate their services and immediately instruct somebody else to review that contract for you and act in your best interest. I think it needs to be really transparent. The whole process needs to be transparent. So if that conveyancer is suggesting that you're going to understand all the terms of the contract, which is something we look at. We look at contracts and Section 32 statements all day long. So we are specialised in property transfers and conveyancing services. The average person may do this once, twice, or maybe 3 times in their lifetime. They're not used to reading special conditions. They couldn't possibly know what an off-the-plan contract looks like or what those special conditions ultimately mean to them. So I would be terminating that relationship and, again, appointing a conveyancer that you have a connection with or you feel you have a connection with and engage them to act for you and review that contract on your behalf.
I think that's one of the things that I know, through this journey I'm going on where I interview different people from different walks of life who have had different experiences with all sorts of, conveyancers or even real estate agents, and just hearing that they didn't know how to get out of it. And it's great to know that something in writing to say we're going to terminate the services and go somewhere else and have someone lined up. That's awesome to know that you can do that.
Absolutely. And I think people need to know that they have rights and they can't, once they've spoken to somebody, it doesn't mean that they're locked in. Obviously, if they've paid some money, potentially that's a whole range of other issues. But again, it's really important to feel supported through that process, and there is always another option. So reach out and ask the question and get some good advice. It's really important.
Absolutely. And one of the other things I wanted to go down the path of, because it's really big right now with that first home buyer, situation, is the grant, the first home buyer grant, and how that all works. So I know there's a lot of scattered information and you can talk to either your broker or a conveyancer about it, but on your side, from the conveyancer's perspective, how do you guys help that process along and how does it work from your side?
Sure. So what normally happens with the first homeowners grant or the first home buyer stamp duty concession, we apply that through an assessment of stamp duty. So it's a process leading into settlement. When we take initial instructions from our client, we work out what they're buying. We work out if it's going to be their principal place of residence, whether it's going to be an investment property for them. So a first home buyer can spend up to $750,000 buying a brand new home that's never been lived in or sold before, so it's being sold for the first time, and be potentially eligible for the first homeowners grant of $10,000. So there's also a range of other concessions that apply. A first home buyer can buy an existing dwelling up to the value of $750,000 and still be entitled to a first home buyer's duty concession. So those concessions are actually applied for via the State Revenue Office website when we assess stamp duty for settlement. That's something that we do on behalf of the clients. If they are paying cash for the purchase of a property, we actually apply directly to the State Revenue Office for them to have the benefit of that first homeowners grant or that first home buyer stamp duty reduction. So mostly we apply for that and liaise with the lender to ensure that the client gets that grant or that reduction at settlement.
And is that a typical service across conveyances, or is that just something your office typically does?
It's part of what we do. It is definitely part of the process and an expectation that you would be applying for anything that's going to be of benefit to your client in terms of buying their first home. There are a number of other grants that are available, for example, if you're a concession card holder or if you're buying off the plan. So part of what we do is ensure that the clients pay the adequate amount of stamp duty based on their particular circumstances. So it's really important to do those calculations at the time of potentially budgeting to see what you can afford. So the mortgage broker or lender that you are utilising as part of the buying process will also assist in calculating those figures to work out how much you need to borrow, and we ensure you get that reduction or that concession come settlement time.
I think you tied that up very nicely, the way you said that, because it sort of brings that whole process together where, you are doing your budgeting at the start, you're talking to your mortgage broker who's going to help you calculate or, plan for those costs. And then on your side, you're just helping that go through on the last part.
Absolutely. It's part of the settlement process. We do all of our settlement processes now in an electronic platform. So part of the preparing settlement process is that we assess stamp duty. So if there's a doubt as to whether or not the client's paid too much stamp duty, we always can utilise the services of the State Revenue Office, and we talk to them and just sort of say, look, there's something that's not quite right about this. Can you have a look at the documentation in the background, see if something's been missed, or, we've ticked the wrong box, because mistakes sometimes do happen. But generally we can get onto that and rectify that before settlement time comes around. So definitely part of the process that we do to ensure that our clients pay adequate stamp duty and no more than they need to pay.
And that's so good to know that that's, the process sort of wrapped up for someone out there listening today. I think they're going to get a lot out of this episode. And I think that's part of the reason why we want to do this kind of thing and have these conversations, is because a lot of the time you don't have an opportunity to, and hear some of the things that do go on. So hopefully this helps those people that are feeling a bit out of sorts.
Absolutely.
And lastly here, what is your advice to the home buyers out there right now who might be feeling a bit out of their depth when it comes to engaging with a conveyancer or going through their first home purchase?
Sure. So I say reach out. I think there's lots of things that you can do to make sure that you're making the right connection with the conveyancer or solicitor that you appoint. Talk to family and friends. See who they've used in the past. Were they happy with them? If not, go to, maybe the real estate agent can recommend you to a conveyancer, or give us a call. I mean, we're here for you. We're here to make sure that the journey is as seamless as possible. So more than happy to help. We can do conveyancing anywhere in the state of Victoria. So I think that's important for people to know. Reach out, ask questions. Questions are really something that a first home buyer generally feels a little bit silly about doing. But as I said, we do this all the time. This is what we do. So reach out and feel supported and empowered throughout the journey.
I love that, Chris. That's lovely. And, I think that'll reassure a lot of people out there that are thinking, what do I do? And I think you've done, you've built that nice environment. It definitely comes across when chatting to you. I know I've got a few questions that I'll probably call you and ask in future, 100%.
Perfect. Thank you, Jo.
Of course. Well, Chris, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been great talking to you and getting your feedback and insights. How can people engage your services, and what's the best way to reach you?
Well, Jo, we're based on the Mornington Peninsula down in Somerville. We can service the state of Victoria. So it's not just conveyancing on the peninsula. We have clients that also move interstate, so we can liaise with interstate conveyancers and lawyers to ensure that your transition interstate is seamless as well. So if clients wish to make contact, we've got our website, which is www.walshconveyancing.com.au. They can give us a call on 03 59 7 5111, or just email me, chris@walshconveyancing.com.au. More than happy to help, more than happy to support and assist clients in their buying and selling journey.
Once again, thank you, Chris. It's been great having you, and thanks everyone for tuning in today. Remember to check the website once again for more about Walsh Conveyancing. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll catch you next time. See you guys. Now it's time for our weekly contributor, Purple Pingers, with the latest no BS story.
Thanks, Jo. Love to hear your thoughts on how my conveyancing experience went. So pretty much I was recommended a conveyancer by the bank, which I'm pretty sure is not on. But anyways, reached out to them. The bank said that they were really good and have dealt with them before. So I called them and they're like, yep, happy to take it on, send it through, blah, 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 blah. We'll send you through the fees and the costs and everything. It's like, yep, this is an acceptable amount. Happy to go forward. Anyways, make the offer, send them the thing, don't hear anything for a bit. So I'm like, I might as well call them up. Doesn't answer. So call the reception. Reception says, "Oh, sorry, your conveyancer's been in hospital for a few weeks." And then I was like, "Oh, sorry to hear that." So they're like, "We'll transfer the matter to this person. This is their contact number." So give them a couple of days and call that person. And that person's like, "Oh, hey, yep, got the matter. Looking through, looks good. Just going to introduce you to my junior lawyer. We'll say his name's Simon." That's absolutely not his name, but it's Simon for the purposes of this. Anyway, so I get a call back a couple of days later from Simon. The cooling off period's done, all of that. And he's like, yeah, no, it looks all good. Everything's sweet, blah, 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 blah. Nothing to worry about. And then a couple of days after that, I get an email from the senior solicitor, and she was like, hey, just letting you know, if you get any emails from Simon, just don't respond, don't answer the phone. So I was like, not too sure about how that's going. So I called her up, and then I was like, hey, Simon, why can't I, he's the one who's reviewed my contract and everything. And then she goes, oh yeah, we found out he has a bit of a criminal history. He probably shouldn't be doing law, blah, 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 blah. And then she's like, do you have any other questions? And at that point in time, I had probably about like 20, but I was like, no, thanks for letting me know. And then here we are.
You've been listening to the No BS Real Estate Podcast. Did you know we're building a home buyers community to give Australians a better way to find their humble abode? Sign up now and we'll send your first home buyers checklist straight to your inbox by visiting www.abodi.com.au so you can say buying your home was the easiest thing you've ever done. Thanks for listening.